no one's going to care if I win this tournament as a white belt. I might get injured. I might not be able to go to work. Like, what do I gain out of this? And it's like, yeah, well, if you never did it, you might be an old man one day and think like, fuck, like I should have competed. I should have done that.
I
And
should have
I
tried.
just like,
What's the most efficient path to victory against this particular opponent?
He's dropping off for the choke here. We could see the finish. It's looking tight. Tight at Alpra.
what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Essential Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kwan. The Essential Jiu-Jitsu Podcast is everything you need to know about Jiu-Jitsu. Today, I have a very special guest from Montreal, Quebec, Mr. PO Leclerc. Welcome to the show.
What's up, Matt? Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. Thank you for coming on. Before we get started, I just wanted to let you guys know if you want to support the show, check out the links in the bottom. Also, check out our online store if you want some merchandise. So, PO, thanks for joining us. I remember you came and did a seminar at my school a couple months ago. It was really awesome. I've had Taza in a couple of times, and he always spoke very highly of you and said, given we're like the same size or whatever, we'd be good training partners for each other. And then you came out and you did a couple seminars around the city. I remember you did a 50-50 seminar at my gym and also at Pacific Top Team Vancouver. I was fortunate enough to be at both of those, and it was really, really great. You were recently at Nogi Worlds, but you weren't competing. That's correct?
Yeah, exactly. So I was in Vegas, but unfortunately, I couldn't make the competition because of a knee injury I had at Euros, IBJJF Euros, 6 weeks prior. So it's been 6 weeks now.
Yeah, it was a knee injury, right?
Yeah. So I had it was in the first match of Euros. I had a like decent guys, like pretty tough guy, but like the first 45 seconds, I was in a lockdown in his half guard. I was trying to buy lock pass. He put me in a lockdown, and like usually I'm quite comfortable there. Like I'm able to pummel out of the position by sitting my weight back. Right, that's the idea. You don't want to go forward against the lockdown. Trying to sit the weight back, and I have the video, but like literally he just extended my leg, and what I heard and felt, and he heard it too, it just went like crack, and I felt my knee like kind of move like this, and no pain at all though at the moment. So I was just like, I'm gonna keep going. But I started to think like, I know one of my friend and other people have lost or like got their ACL tore in that position. So I was like, fuck, man, I might be out for a year. You start having those thoughts. So I kept going for a little bit, and he put me back in the position after a few exchange, and I felt my knee again go like that, and started like to kind of feel pain. So I just like had to quit, unfortunately, during the match. And yeah, here we are. It's better than expected, actually.
Do you know the extent of the injury? Like, have you had it MRI'd yet? I assume not, unless you did it in the States, because everything in Canada takes forever, right? If you're going to go through the system.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
sorry. Yeah. So I didn't get the MRI on it, but I have a extremely good athletic therapist and physiotherapist that I work with. So we did like a bunch of tests that, excuse me, some people like say like, oh, it's not as reliable, but like it's someone I trust a lot, and like the ACL was fine compared to the other same thing. We compared both legs, and at the end, what we realized it was like a second degree of the LCL. The way I reacted to the test, so not fully torn, just like a good stretch in there. Little bit of meniscus, but not like something preventing the range of motion. And then lastly, a little bit of the hamstring that attach on the knee, the long head, it's called. So everything on the outside kind of took a little hit. Um, but I was ready to get an MRI if he told me I needed one, and I would have went private because in Quebec we have two systems because the public system is so bad they need a second wheel. So if I had to like spend money for it, I would have spent it if it meant like just making sure I don't need surgery. But my rate of improvement has been so great in the last few weeks that it's clearly like the diagnosis I just said.
Yeah. Have you and you've had knee issues before in the past, of course, like I'm no stranger to knee issues. I've had torn meniscus on my right knee twice. Once I had it trimmed, and then the other time I had it repaired. And luckily it's been good so far. I mean, knee injuries are kind of those things that can kind of happen like at any time, right? You can just sort of, even a harmless movement sometimes, and boom, you all of a sudden you have an injury. Maybe you didn't warm up correctly or whatever. And I've had my meniscus damaged in a lockdown actually before, so I know exactly what you're talking about when you're not expecting it, and boom, they slam the lockdown on. So like, do you moving forward, are you training right now? Are competitions even something you're thinking about right now, or are you just sort of healing up and taking some time off competing?
So yeah, just to basically to give a little history, because you were talking about your meniscus. Same thing. I had like two internal meniscus on each knee, like small surgeries, like that are not super intrusive, right? They just took out a little part. That was like years ago, like 7 years ago. So more at the beginning of my my jiu-jitsu journey. And I had been really diligent about doing my physio, making sure I get stronger, like just building good habits, and never had any issue in the last 7 years with my knees, zero at all. So when that happened, it was a bit scary. Definitely, like you're thinking, "Fuck, man! Like if I get surgery, I'm out for so long." You start having all those scenarios in your head, and and one of the scenario I was thinking was like, "Fuck, if it's my ACL, I'm not competing until next year, like a full year." So now,
Assuming everything heals properly.
yeah, that on top, right? I feel like if you get a good surgeon and you're very diligent about how you do things, I feel like you can be fine. You know, what's hard is like and I speak like I'm sure you're the same, but we always want to come back too early. So because we just love training. Um, so right now, so I've been training for a few weeks already. So 3 weeks after the injury, I was already like literally actually a week after I was in the gym, not jiu-jitsu gym, but in the gym doing physiotherapy every day on my knee, like on my legs. Like I said, I have someone like Max Hanna. He's in Montreal, like probably the best athletic therapist I've ever worked with. And he made sure like, all right, we're going to build you up, like making sure like we start with some stability, range of motion, and then build up with like power, strength, speed, etc. So I've been doing that in the last few weeks, and I've been training pretty hard in the last 2 weeks. I did have, am I ready to compete? Like I wanted to do the ADCC Open in Austin, which is this weekend coming up. I think I'm going to probably skip it because like I can train hard. I can go really hard, but there's like little certain position where I feel I'm not like sure. And when you compete, it's different than training, obviously. So we'll probably be back competing in January if all thing goes well.
And you're in Texas right now?
Yeah, I'm in Austin right now. Yeah.
Nice. You know, I've said on this show many times, I think like if you're a competitor or at least you're just serious about jiu-jitsu, it's so important to have a good physiotherapist who's working with you, and to just, especially after once you hit 30, like you have to stay on top of your physiotherapy. You have to, you know, even if you're not injured, you have to have a preventative routine in play. Otherwise, you know, that's when things start to get kind of shitty. And for me, I notice like if I don't do my leg exercises a couple times a week, I even feel it. I'm like right away, my knees feel a little bit, I don't know if looser is the word, but they just feel like I need to sort of, I need to focus on those muscle groups that surround the knee and get the blood continuously flowing in and out of there. I mean, that's just what happens when you reach your 30s and you start to leave your prime. But you know, you had mentioned that like mid-match you kind of just stop fighting because you realize like, okay, there's actual damage here and I'm in the position again. That's happened to me. Excuse me. It's happened to me a couple of times. And I'm the kind of guy where if I get caught in a submission, I have no problem tapping. If I get hurt in a match and I know that there's an injury, I basically stop fighting. You know what I mean? Like, especially if you're in a tournament, there's like, okay, great if you win this match, but there might be more matches you're expected to fight. But I know people who their meniscus will like lock and they're just like, yeah, I'm just going to keep fighting. Or sometimes you see these matches with some crazy guys. There's a couple of examples where guys will just eat like crazy injuries. I mean, even Taza on Tommy Langaker, you know, where he's like eating this deep heel hook and just eating it and then keeps fighting. And I'm thinking like, that's fucking crazy. Like, I don't know. For me, I think for me, I guess I don't know. I guess I'm just not serious enough about jiu-jitsu to keep fighting through something like that. Or if I feel something tear and I know there's an injury in play, like I'm the kind of guy that will probably just stop competing if I know that I've sustained an injury. Like, what do you think of guys like that? Why, I don't even know what kind of question I can pose around this. I guess it's just kind of being a crazy bastard, I guess, right? Like, or maybe there's people that don't want to lose that bad. They're just going to keep fighting through the injury.
So it's actually funny because I kind of identify as one of those crazy bastard in a way, but not with everything. So I have my limits if you want, right? I've always told people like, look, if I get locked in like an inverted heel hook or like, you know, something that would damage my knees, I'm gonna tap and that lockdown was so weird because it cracked but no pain at all. So I was like, I didn't want to tap at that moment. It cracked and I was like, what the fuck? You know, like what's going on? So that's why I kept going for a little bit. But then when the pain settled and I felt my knee again moving, I was like, all right, this is not good. And look, even if I would have won that match, I could have not competed the next match because I could barely walk out of the arena. So because like the swelling and the pain was setting in. So those type of injury, like especially knee, shoulders, like I'm not touching that. But I had my fair share like of like ankle pop or like I had two elbows. Like, well, I remember one match was like, it was so crazy. I'm a slow starter sometime in matches, so like people put me in deep submissions and I like kind of have good escapes. And but this time I got put, like it was a while back, I got put in an armbar and I rotated the wrong way and my arm just started like separating and I was like, it's too early in the match. I'm not tapping. I didn't come here to tap in like fucking 15 seconds. So I just like kind of ate the pop, figure it out, got out, won the match. So in hindsight, I'm like, it's stupid, but at the same time, I was pretty happy with the result, you know? And to be honest, at Euros, yeah, my leg was like, I was pissed about my leg, but I was more pissed about quitting the match, mid-match. For me, it was like super hard. Like, I go out there and I really want to win, and and it's more about myself. Like, I disappointed myself, even if I had an injury. But look, now that I think about it, it was the right decision. But at the moment, I was like, I fucking hate myself for quitting at that moment. But so it's like, I feel like it depends for me. It's like an elbow, I might sacrifice a few pop to get out. A knee, fuck that. I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Something about like knees and shoulders and spines. You know, like we tend to prioritize those injuries above others, especially if you've had like a previous knee injury. It kind of leaves like PTSD, you know, where it can be even hard to come back from a knee injury and to just go at the normal pace that you used to be accustomed to, because you have to train your mind to have the confidence to like do those moves again, because it could be months at a time, you know, 6, 8, 12 months when you're recovering from a knee injury, where like you have to baby it and you have to be so careful moving around, and there's like a mental barrier that you have to get past in order to get back to full training. Just as someone who's very experienced like yourself, high level competitor and instructor, like who's been through injuries, like what is a piece of advice that you would give to anyone listening who is maybe has just sustained like a big injury, or maybe they haven't sustained an injury, but one day they, you know, it's inevitable that it's going to happen in this sport. What kind of advice could you give to someone like that?
So I think like you said it pretty good earlier. You were talking how like you're telling people how they have to have a good physiotherapist and make sure they actually take care of their body, even if they're not injured. So I think like what I'm seeing is like obviously in the gym I'm surrounded by like guys from every age, every horizon, and like newcomers that are very serious about the sport, but they lack maybe the knowledge of like training, physio, having a schedule that's like being able to maybe take a step back when you train. You know, as you get older and you have more experience in the sport, you realize that you can't just be doing 2 or 3 sessions a day every day. Obviously, unless you're on steroids, probably you can like do that for a while, but like even then, I'm sure you're gonna like burn the candle on both ends, start getting injured. So I'm always telling the guys like you gotta play with volume. You know, you can't just be training hard every session every day. And if you do, you need to have like downtime where now you can maybe work on mobility, work on like strengthening, work on range of motion. So one thing is, it's funny, but like all the years, my first few years, I got injured so much, but it taught me so much for now. Where like now I'm 30 years old, I'm not old, but I'm not like I was when I was 24, 25. I can't fucking sustain like 3 sessions a day. And even then I would get injured. So now it's like I'll do 1 or 2 sessions a day. I'll make sure I have strengthening and like a routine of like mobility and recovery throughout the week. And I think if someone implements that earlier in their career, I think it's easier to make it without injuries.
Mm-hmm. What about like the mental side of injuries, you know, because I've had times when I'm injured and I'm just, you know, when an injury is bad, you're like, fuck, like, am I ever going to be what I used to be? Is my body going to work the same way it used to be? Maybe you're on the shelf for, excuse me, like I said, up to a year, and you know your teammates and your training partners, your opponents potentially are all training, and you're kind of sitting there and unable to train. Your mind can go to some dark places and start to play tricks on you, right? So like what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's maybe never experienced that and they're experiencing it for the first time?
So I think there's always like I think there's like a moment where when the injury happens, you're allowed to kind of cry about it a little bit, feel it, you know, have feeling about it, like be frustrated, angry, whatever it is that you're feeling. I think there's a short period of time when that happened. You're allowed to live that. But as soon as like it's been a few days, like whatever it is, like I like personally, like I'll be sad about it, and then I'll probably eat some bad food for a day or two, you know, just to make me feel better. You know, that's probably my way of coping. But once that's done, I feel like your mind should switch right away to how can I find solution? Just like in jiu-jitsu, right? When something doesn't work out, you got to find solution. So it's all about building, and maybe you can write it down. Maybe you can uh, just like read about it and talk to people about it. But I feel like you need a solution. So one thing I find that help your mental is staying in the game. Staying in the game means showing up to the gym if you can and watching rounds, maybe looking at the guys drilling, like learning something, right? Your brain is still working. If you can't do that, you can still watch tape, watch matches, watch instructionals. There's so many ways you can actually get better at jiu-jitsu without having to do the physical training. And then what we said, right? Be surrounded by people that will help you. So a physiotherapist, your coach, your teammates that can maybe give you advice, that can just keep the spirit up. So I feel like one thing that we want to do sometimes when we get injured, we just want to isolate ourselves, right? We're like, fuck this shit. Like I'm sad. I don't want to be around the gym because I can't train. But I think you got to do the opposite. So I would say that would definitely help the mental side. But it's okay. I always say it's okay to like kind of live even if it takes a week of like being fucking pissed off and sad, like do it and then move on. Just like a competition, you lose a competition, you're allowed to be frustrated, but then find solutions.
I think kind of having that like Kaizen mindset where it's like, okay, my knee can't do what it used to do. I have to wait months, and it's going to be a long journey till I get back to where it was. but still thinking like, where can I improve? Like you mentioned, mental studying, even going to the gym. I remember when I was, when I was like a junior, like a white or blue belt, when I used to get injured a lot more just because I was unaware of the movements, and a lot of the time it was me injuring myself, honestly. And I remember I would get hurt and like I didn't show up to the gym for months at a time because it was like too hard for me, and I didn't see the value of just going to the gym and just being immersed in the environment. But now I always tell my students, like, if you can, keep coming to the gym, because you can almost put yourself in your training partner's shoes as they're rolling and sort of problem solve as you're watching from a third person perspective. And I think that luckily there are so many ways that you can still improve, even if it's not physically, or if you get the clearance from your physiotherapist to immediately start your recovery exercises, like get the ball rolling, start to build improvement any way you can. Or if it's your knee that you can't work out yet, you have other parts of your body that you can work. So there's just like, I think it's important to just like always have something to work towards to give you that, to give you that dopamine rush, like, oh, I did something for this. I accomplished something. I can still improve. And then you'll find a lot of the time when you come back from big injuries that you're like, whoa, actually it's like right where I left off. I'm actually not that far behind because I was still keeping my mind in the game. And I think it's also important for people who have injuries that there is going to be feelings of doubt and, will I ever get back to the healthiness that I once had or whatever. I think it's important to stay positive and remember that like the body is an amazing thing and it does do a good job of healing for the most part, aside from like some real catastrophic injuries. Most of the time, staying positive and just reassuring yourself like this is just a bump in the road and things will get better. That's awesome. Let's switch gears a little bit. I got a question for you.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a deep question. I'm curious to see what you say. I was asked this question on a podcast a couple months ago, so I'd like to ask it to you. Do you ever, PO Leclerc, are you ever fully unguarded?
Ever fully unguarded? It's a deep question.
Do you ever show? Do you ever show everyone or anyone like your true full self, or are you ever unguarded in any way?
It's a great question. I think everybody kind of has a guard a little bit high, especially when you go out and especially when you meet new people, right? I find like I am for sure at some moment probably totally unguarded. I find myself when I'm with the people that I know the most, like at the gym, obviously at Tristar and at B Team, I find like I really feel myself, like I can show like the way I am, and like people will, even if they'll make fun of me or I will always feel comfortable. And obviously in my relationship with my girlfriend, I feel like I'm totally unguarded. So I would say those are the two instances, but even more with my girlfriend. I think it's the person where, and my family, I would say, yeah, my family too, same level. So I'll put my girlfriend and my family. So my family overall are the person where I'm the most unguarded, like emotionally on any subject, where they'll tell me if they think I'm wrong, and I won't feel like, because I'm wide open with them. And then the gym, definitely another place where almost completely unguarded. But then there's certain things like about like maybe your feeling and stuff that you would keep like on that's more like personal, right? That you may not bring out to the gym. So not totally unguarded at the gym, but not far from. Because I find like I feel like I would present myself as an authentic person, so that's what I like to bring. I want to be myself in front of people as much as possible, and yeah, I don't know if that answered your question. It's a good one, definitely.
It's an open question, man. When I was asked that, I was kind of like, I've never even considered that. Like for me, I think to some degree, I always sort of have my guard up in some sort of way, and I thought about that, and I'm like, like even in front of my family, do I have my guard up? And I'm like, yeah, in ways I think I kind of do, and everyone is different. And it makes me wonder like, okay, what would it take for me to be like completely unguarded and to kind of show my cards, right? To show my hand. I mean, I have a podcast, right? And sometimes it gets kind of spicy. And I've been on other shows where like it gets downright triggering to a lot of people, and that's fine. But like, even, you know, if I go to like teach a class full of kids, or if there's women in the class, like I'm probably going to conduct myself differently than if I do with my best friends, right? Or my my close circle of friends. It's just kind of an interesting question, thinking about like, well, what would it take? What would it take to show certain people who I'm still very close with, like that fully unguarded version of myself? And I actually don't know. Is it time spent with them? Is it going through hard times with them? Is it them seeing you at your best and your worst? Is it just time? Like, you know, it's kind of an interesting thought.
Yeah, I think a lot has to do with trust in a way, right? If you trust the people surrounding you, you're like more likely to open yourself. Because the thing is, like, if you we're all guarding ourselves in different ways, right? And I do it too, like you said. Like if I'm presented to certain type of people or people that I don't know, you present yourself in a way where you're not just gonna be like wide open right away. Because and I really think it's normal. But I think the more you get to know people and build trust, I think the trust brings you the chance to open up. And I think we're all striving to be completely unguarded with the people we like, but it takes time, of course. And it takes the right persons too.
Cool. Okay, here's another question for you. So this has to do with learning. And you could look at it through the perspective of yourself learning something new for the first time. Or I'd also like you to look at the question from the perspective of yourself as an instructor with the challenge of trying to teach something new to someone for the first time. So let's say there's a move or a guard or whatever, a technique where you're trying to learn it from the first time. You're with your training partner, you've seen someone do it and like, okay, let's figure this out. And also look at yourself being the instructor trying to teach something to someone new for the first time, completely new move. What do you think is the best way to teach or learn something in jiu-jitsu? Like what methodology, what pedagogy would you use as a coach? And if you were just going to try and figure something out with a training partner, kind of how would you do that?
Okay, so I'll start with a training partner, the idea, because I find like for myself, it's, I'm not going to say like it's easy, but like it's definitely easier to learn for yourself than to, like, you know, you're an instructor. It's always harder to conduct an instruction to someone and find the right way to trigger them into learning than to learn yourself, right? We're both black belts. We've been training for a long time. We see a move, kind of easy to start getting the concept around it and where we can like get into it. So for myself, I think obviously like having some visual images of it and then recreating it with a partner and then asking question with the partner about, I like getting into moves like where, like, how would you react from there, and then get into those reaction of kind of almost live situation with a partner. And even if they're not the same level as I am, I can kind of get a sense of like, all right, this is the right reaction, this is not. So trying to just get into the move and see what are the things I might be missing by having reactions. Am I actually doing it properly at first, like more technically, and then adding on reactions and how can I connect it to other moves? So for myself, that's how I would like kind of approach it. As far as teaching for someone, it's so different. Like, because the thing is, like, the more I teach, and I've always said like teaching is one of the thing that made me the better faster. But the more I teach, the more I realize how it's hard to just expect people to nail a move by you showing it, you know? So I think whenever I teach a new move, I try to explain the why am I trying to achieve this technical position. So I like to show the move so they see a movement, they see what we're trying to achieve, and then explaining how and why. And it can be true, like verbal concept. It can be through explaining and trying to point out like what I'm trying to achieve. Let's say we're talking about guard pass, like why am I trying to pin the hips, preventing movement from the hips? Why am I trying to pin the shoulders? And what does it do? And then I hope so, that it triggers in their mind like, okay, when I get to like a head and arm and I pin the shoulders down, it prevents them from like framing and moving their upper body, right? So it's easier for me to start passing the guard. So that's my approach. I'm sure there's like things that I could add, but like, yeah.
So you said something interesting, like when you're teaching something, you don't know, or you're not sure of how much just showing something will actually transfer knowledge or transfer skill, right? Yeah. And I guess we're just like kind of creeping towards the eco conversation, if we want to call it that, right? Like live training versus explicit instruction, or live training versus drilling versus a non-resisting opponent. What is your opinion on drilling, like non-resistant drilling, just drilling for reps, but at the same time drilling for precision? Is that something that you involve in your training?
Yeah, absolutely. I think drilling is important. I think drilling mindlessly is not important. What I mean is like drilling with an idea in mind, of like trying to reproduce a move, trying to understand a movement. Like every time I see a new move, the first thing I'm going to do is actually drill it. I'm going to try to recreate the move, try to get in the position, and like, oh, it's not like that. Like you think you got it and then you do it. You're like, oh no, it's not like that. So finding the precision in that drilling is important, in my opinion. Although once you get that, you don't want to just drill for reps, because then it becomes, you have to do it for a while, but then, and that could be in one session, right? Let's say in a 1 hour session, let's say you learn one move, you drill it for like, I don't know, 5 reps, and then you're like, okay, I kind of got it. Now this is where I'm going to start like asking my partner, like, can you like just give me a bit of reaction, and trying to start getting into it. Although it has to do with our level. Like if I ask a blue belt to get like, let's say a berimbolo from, I don't know, just like from the Laiva, and then he drills it, and then I ask the other guy who's a black belt to give him a reaction, for sure the black belt's just going to fuck him up, you know? So I think there's, depending on your level, drilling for reps to actually make sure you understand the move and do it properly in space is really important. And then moving on with like situations.
Yeah, like at our gym, like we don't do like drilling for reps, like speed drills, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like 1, 2, 3. Like I think we're kind of past that, but
yeah, just
getting light reactions from the partner from the bottom, even if it's like 10, 15%, but it's still it encourages the Tory, the person doing the technique, to still assess reactions as they're doing the drill. So it's almost like I don't know if you know who Josh McKinney is, but he's a black belt from the States, and he talks about a game that they play called Designated Winner, where basically one person, it's like a drill, one person does the technique and then the other person reacts, but they don't give it to them just like a gift. It's like they still have to work with it. They still have to sort of deal with reactions and problems along the way, but in the end, they still get their goal. And I guess really the overall, it's almost like a spectrum. Like you said, when you first learn something, say it's a berimbolo and you need to figure it out, you need to like feel it, right? So on that one side of the spectrum, you're probably going to be, if you've never done a berimbolo before, you're probably going to be doing it against no resistance, just so you can literally like get your grips, go upside down, and then start like chasing the back or whatever you're going to do. But then I think as you get, you know, you even said it might even happen in one session. As you get more experienced and you feel like, okay, I got this move figured out, now we start to increase resistance, and then it goes into full on, you could call it a constraint-based game or constraint-led training, or full on positional sparring. So on one end of the spectrum, there's that piece where it's like, okay, I just need to feel it. On the other end, it's like, okay, I want reactions, and even I want reactions with like good resistance. Like, okay, we're both trying to kind of win, right? And so I think where a lot of the eco guys kind of they get mixed up is that they think that like only explicit instruction is somehow detrimental to the learning process. And I'm not so convinced that that is the case, because I always wonder, like, how is it detrimental to my learning to know that a technique exists? They say, well, there's no such thing as a technique, because a technique is never the same. It's never repeated in the same way. Like, maybe I do it to you and you're slipperier than the person I learned it on, or maybe you're stronger in the forearms, or maybe I don't know, the mats are whatever. My arm is at a different angle than before. I'm still trying the same technique, but there's so many infinite variables that the move's never the same. And to some degree, I think that that's true. However, I don't think that that means that the technique can't be repeated. It can't be repeated. I think that the technique can still be repeated enough that we can call this move, this is what we know to be an arm bar. Okay, this is what we know to be a arm bar from the pillow juji position. This is an arm bar from the 3/4 position, right? So to say that there's no such thing as a technique, or that a technique is never the same, I think it's kind of hyperbolic. And I think that, like, explicit instruction definitely, in my opinion, has its place, because I've seen it and I've felt it be useful for myself and my students when I show them something, and then I see that they can, like, try to reach it, rather than just like self-organizing everything. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that one. I think, like, I've learned through explicit techniques and situations. So I've learned through, like, they call it games and stuff like that. I think it's more restrictive. I've learned personally when I was training in New York with John, with Firas as well at Tristar. We've always, like, dissected techniques and then applied them in a situation base, but always. Firas has always been very open about techniques, and he's always been telling us, I will show you every techniques, but you will have to choose, in the sense where, like, giving you an example, like the buggy choke has been going around, right? Firas didn't go like, all right, this move is bullshit, He actually, let's try to figure it out and understand how it works, and this way we can understand defense. You don't have to do it, but at least you got to understand the move. So in my mind, it's like it's not that one technique doesn't, like, you put a name on the technique and that's it, and then there could be variables. Of course, that's why there's, for each situation, when you systematize jiu-jitsu, you see, let's say, a kimura or an armbar. We call it an armbar, but there's, like, so many situations where it can arrive, right? And the idea is that when I get an armbar, I'm able to react to each and every situation presented in front of me, for me to change maybe my leg configuration, maybe my grip, maybe there's so many things, but that you got to learn, in my opinion, by dissecting the armbar and the situation. And when you go into, let's say, an armbar situation and the guy escaped, what happened? Try to get that, come back at the gym, figure out what happened, find a solution, and then apply the solution. In my opinion, it's as simple as that. Maybe there's other ways, but I find, like, technique first, situation, solution is a way, and systematization of jiu-jitsu is a great way to get better faster.
And I think where the eco guys really get it right is when it comes down to actual motor skill development. Like let's say I never trained jiu-jitsu, but I'm obsessed with jiu-jitsu instructionals. And, like, I watch all the top guys, the Danahers, the Gordons, the Craig Jones, Nicky Ryan. I'm watching all of this stuff. Let's say I'm incredibly book smart, but when it comes to me trying to armbar someone my own size, like, I can't do it. Like, I haven't had that live repetition with all the different variables and the live resistance, but I know all the systems. Let's say I know all of those DVDs like the back of my hand. Okay, that's great, but I don't have the ability to apply those techniques because I haven't put it in a live situation. So
of course,
I do believe that learning a technique or learning a position or whatever, there's kind of like, there's the mental side, but then there's also, how do we transfer that into actual physical How do we get that? How do we get physical results out of that? And I think the best way to do it, almost undeniably, is through live resistance.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, but like I think like I don't know that much about like the ecosystem and what's been like going around, but for me like if you tell me like I know they have games and stuff like that that are kind of restrictive. I don't know to what extent is it better than like getting in a position like let's say doing a back situation or armbar situation or turtle. Like I find like having freedom in certain situation is a good way to express your character through the techniques you've learned. Like, let's say you're a big Kimura guy and I'm an armbar guy, and we start in a turtle or, let's say, armbar situation. We're probably going to play it differently, but we might end up in the same result, but we'll play it differently because the constraint is more about what we're seeing and what we're liking than to actually be restricted. And maybe I'm talking out of my ass right now because I don't know their system that much, but I think at the end of the day, live resistance has always been super important, and learning technique. It's a combination of both. Like you said, if you're book smart but you don't train, guess what? You're not going to be able to beat someone that trains. That's for sure. And if you're just training but you're like not trying to improve through technique, you might beat some people, but technical people will beat you. So it's like you need both at the end of the day for sure.
Totally agree. There's an age-old debate about jiu-jitsu. Some guys, like MMA fighters, will get they'll kind of take offense to it if a jiu-jitsu guy says, "Oh, I had 5 fights on the weekend." They'll be like, "Jiu-jitsu's not a fight. It's a match, right? Like we wouldn't call a wrestling match a fight." Is grappling a fight or is it a match?
I think it's both. I say both. Sometimes I'll say I had the match. Some other time I'll say I had the fight. Like to me, it's not like maybe I don't think this through too much, but I understand why. Like some people are like, oh, it's not like look, he pulled guard, like he's sitting on his butt. It's not a fight. But like at the end of the day, if I get into your leg and I like break your knee, and you're like there's an element of violence to it, of course. Like it's martial arts still, but it like to me it feels more like a match because it's more of a sport. That's how I treat it. But I understand why people might call it a fight. I think it's up to people. Would I choose one or the other? No, I think it depends. Dude, some jiu-jitsu match are like a fight. Like they're very aggressive, very tough, very like you need grit, you need to give everything. Some other matches are more like or fights are more like a match, where it's more like maybe sports wise. It depends. I find like you'll see it. You'll see when a match is turning into a fight and when a fight is more of a match. You know what I mean?
So in that, and if that's the case, how would you define what's the difference between a fight and a match? Because I look at a fight as kind of a contest between two wills. Like even, if you're arguing with your partner or your spouse or whatever, it's like sometimes we call that fighting, right? Oh, we had a fight last night, me and my wife. It's like, but there was no strikes, there was no physical altercation there.
Yeah.
It is when we're talking combat sports, is that defined by abrasiveness or striking?
I think you said it best. I think I will steal that from you, but it's a battle of will. Yeah, that's what it is. It's like who wants to win the most and who's willing to take the risks and to reap the reward. And I think like you could like, but then after you would ask like, is a chess game like in between two grandmasters, is that a fight or is that just a chess game? So it's a good question. I think there's personal preference to it. I feel like because there's a part that's physical and a battle of will, it makes it a fight definitely. But I'll say match from time to time. Maybe I'm just.
It's kind of interesting because nobody would look at a boxing match or a kickboxing match or an MMA fight and call that. They wouldn't refer to that as a fight. Like you can look at somebody trying to kick someone's head off and punch him in the head and the body, and anyone's gonna call that a fight, right? Like no, I just called them matches because they are contests, but like they're fights undeniably, right? But like we don't look at a wrestling competition as a fight. Even though they clearly are battling each other, they're well trained a lot of the time. They're working super hard and exerting a lot of energy and trying to defeat each other. It's interesting to me, I guess. I think it might be honestly like a striker thing, where strikers look at grappling and they kind of look at it like, well, you didn't necessarily eat blows to the head. You didn't sustain pain on the same level that I did in my fight. So therefore, they almost belittle it as if it's not a fight. I've always just found that kind of an interesting thing, and it gets kind of hazy in martial arts when we start defining what is a fight and what is not. Because like I said, I find fighting is just, it's a competition of two wills. Who's going to break the other person's will? Like you said, sometimes grappling matches are more like a match where they're both kind of flowing and trying to out technique each other. And then other times, especially when you look at like ADC, there's hard clubs to the head. Physicality, especially in ADCC rule set, physicality really can play a huge factor in victory sometimes.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think at the end of the day, it's like, it's a combat sport. There's an element not only of like grit and battle of will, but on top, like there is physicality. There is a form of violence in a certain way. And like, I don't know if fight means violence, but I think it's like almost like bound together. You know what I mean?
And I think it's, using physicality and grittiness and making them a jiu-jitsu match a fight. Sometimes I feel like that can be an effective strategy for an athlete to use over another, to kind of overwhelm them and to feed them mentally and morally. But sometimes I find that can have actually the opposite effect, where it kind of wakes the other person up, and now the other person is like, okay, I guess this is a fight, and they start coming back, and it can almost have like an undesired effect when you start going at someone. And I saw, like, when you guys are training at the B team, I mean, I've never been there. I have a student who just came back from there, actually. I've never really seen like full training sessions, but I assume you guys simulate ADCC training pretty hard. Like, it gets pretty physical in there, right? A lot of like wrestle jitsu style.
Yeah. So it's funny, like I've been there for like 3 weeks, around 3 weeks. I was in Vegas for a little bit, but like when I come here, it's always a good moment for me to improve my wrestling a lot for two reasons. Like, they have a lot of good wrestlers, like people that are like wrestle jitsu, like you said, that are really good at it. So great place to do so. And playing guard over there is like hell. When you go against the top guys, they have like really good passing, very tough to implement like your guard game. So like at some point right away, you want to just like start coming up and shooting singles or highs back up. So when I get there, I try to just wrestle as much as possible, just to give me a good solid base, learn some new techniques from there. And I find like I can play guard more back home, and then what can I take away the most at B team is probably wrestling. Now, as far as the training goes, for sure, depending on who is training for what, maybe the rule set will change, but most of the time it's going to be like 10-minute rounds. In the morning, it's more 6 minutes, but like at noon, it's 10-minute rounds, and depending who you roll with, you're going to go pretty hard. I've been lucky to train with J-Rod a lot, and he's not like, it's not easy at all. Like, he's not giving you an inch, and he's really strong, really good, improving. And it's like, we get into wars sometimes. We'll have matches, right? that are more like maybe playful, but still kind of intense. And then we'll have like rounds when, if we do go hard, it's like, a lot of wrestling, a lot of like exchange into like front head and like submission, and then if it doesn't work, instead of like playing guard, you try to highs back up right away. So more ADCC style, and being physical is super important.
Is there a lot of guard pulling in that room in training?
There is, but there is not as much as most room, I would say. Like, I think a lot of people are wrestling and they want to be on top.
In that room, do you guys allow like flying attacks in training? Do you allow cannies and guard jumping and flying arm bars and things?
Yeah, no, not at all. Same thing at TriStar.
Yeah, same thing with us. Do you think that those moves should be allowed in competition? Like even at ADCC, should we allow canny basami? Should we allow flying attacks?
Yeah, I think in competition it should be allowed. I'm all in for it. I don't do them really, like, but I think like they're part of the game, and like I don't want the sport to get watered down in a way where like, look, I understand there's more chance of or danger of injuries, but like in the room, as long as I'm protected, when I go out there, dude, it's like the lockdown, right? Like, look, I got injured in the lockdown. I'm not like, oh, we should ban the lockdown. I think it's a real technique and I should figure it out myself. And if someone jumped canny on me, I should be ready to either hit a sprawl real fast or roll into it because like and start defending because it's part of the game. I don't want it to be out of the game.
How do you, if it's not allowed in the training room, how do we prepare to defend and execute those moves?
Very good question, right? If we're not allowed to do it, like how you're going to get better. For us, has been always big about like not allowing it, but actually drilling it from time to time with higher level guys, like people you trust, and people you know are going to give the right reaction. And we've talked about like what you should do, and because they might happen, but for sure, a part of it you'll never be as fully ready as if the room was allowing it, but at the same time you got to protect yourself. So I think it's like if you want to get better at defending it, you have to pick a partner that you know that won't like jump straight in your knee and you give the right reaction, right? Because the thing is like most injuries that happen with jumping guard and canny basamis are like people not reacting the right way and like getting their legs straight or like pulling back, getting their legs straight, double knees, jumping guard into it. So I think if you and your partner knows what's going on, then you can start discussing and practicing. So I think it's on you to pick someone and do it.
Would you say that like, you're especially guard jumping very, very common in IBJJF? Um, Arguably maybe not very applicable for like a real fight situation, but for IBJJF, man, it's a damn good way to get to guard, honestly. Yeah. Especially in the gi, like you want to get to close guard, like it's a good strategy. Would you say, because I kind of feel that like for canny basamis and guard jumps and flying attacks, a lot of your ability to be prepared for it has to do with just your stance.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like if you just like the same, right? If you grab a single leg and you kind of stand like tall to the side, and the guy like you give the chance of the guy to jump canny. Of course, like there's your stance will make the difference. I think being ready and understanding where the person can jump makes a big difference, and being sharp. Like not being asleep when you're in a match. It's important that if you do grab a leg, you have to think about the possibility of it. Um, and that's it. I think drilling and knowing where you can get caught is going to be a big difference.
PO Leclerc, what's your biggest fear?
Huh. Oh yeah, I know actually. I was about to say it's a very tough question, but I know. I think since I'm a kid, it never changed. I think one of my or probably my biggest fear is like I've always I'm always thinking about the future, maybe a bit too much sometimes. So living in the present is really I'm trying to always get myself back in the present. But since I was a kid, I always thought I I want to make sure I'm going to be enough. I want to be not necessarily like it's not about being a celebrity or I just want to make sure I make the most of my life, and I'm scared of not making enough of my life, and that has been haunting me forever. But I think now that I'm 30 years old and I'm happy, I'm a happy person with like I'm super lucky. I have a great family, great people around me. I'm doing what I love. Um, like overall, I'm happy, but I always have that little thought in my mind of if like if I don't want to have regrets, right? I want to make sure I do enough, and I want to be enough. It doesn't have to be. I don't have to be like ADCC world champion. It's not about that. It's about everything in my life. I want to make sure I do everything to get the most of it. It's hard for me to explain, but I think you understand. Yeah.
in not so many words, I basically have the same answer. I actually have kind of a fear of time, in that I'm afraid that time will pass me by. And I guess really what the core of the fear is the fear of regret, right? Like, just like you said,
Yeah.
looking back and thinking, I could have done more. I should have done more. I could have put forth a better effort. Oh, I could have entered that tournament. Why didn't I? I actually use this. I've used it a couple of times in my life to help me make huge decisions, like leaving my career that I had and now making jiu-jitsu my full-time career. The biggest factor in my choice was the idea of regretting where my life would be 1 decade from now, 2 decades from now, 3 decades from now. And I thought, like, I don't want to be that person who has the regret of like, oh, I should have done that. I should have pulled the trigger and taken that risk and started my own thing. Or even like doing that first competition is like, should I do it? I don't know. Maybe you're like a white belt or whatever, and you're wondering, what's the point of this? Like, why would I? No one's gonna care if I win this tournament as a white belt. I might get injured. I might not be able to go to work. Like, what do I gain out of this? And it's like, yeah, well, if you never did it, you might be an old man one day and think like, fuck, like I should have competed. I should have done that. I just like, I have that fear of regret, that fear that I held back when I could have given more. Mm-hmm. And for me, it basically sounds like the same answer as you. Oh, just that fear of regret and the fear of time passing you by.
Yeah, I think you put it right into words. Yeah, it's just being enough to like making the decision that will make me a better person down the road, that will make sure I've done what I could to better myself and better the people around me. I think that's the main thing. Yeah.
Awesome. We're almost done here. Couple questions. Let's just talk like competitive jiu-jitsu for a bit. Did you watch Who's Number One?
Yeah, I did.
Or not Who's Number One. Fight Pass. Sorry.
Yeah, I was actually there for coaching and helping the boys from B team.
Man, that was fucking awesome. Like, and Nicky Rod called out Gordon. Of course, Gordon doesn't want to. I don't think he's afraid, but he does. I think he just doesn't want Nicky to experience any success from him. Clearly, the two don't like each other. But that match to me is very, very interesting under a variety of rule sets, right? And of course, Nicky's just always getting better and better. Obviously, Gordon is too. That match, I think it kind of needs to happen. And I think there's few guys that can actually bring a challenge to Gordon aside from Nicky Rod. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that match has to happen. Nicky Rod just showed, like, it's crazy how, like, when you see like his matches with Yuri is a like great competitor, right? It's very seasoned. Like, he's the ADCC world absolute medalist, gold medalist. Nicky Rod lost to him at ADCC, but beat him before, like, pretty convincingly. But then you never know, right? Like, okay, they're 1-1. Who was, like, maybe they had an off day, whatever. And then this weekend, I mean, it's pretty clear how more dominant or like Nicky Rod was, and he looked really good. And I thought, like, a few more minutes he would probably sub him. Like, I think it was just a matter of time. So after something like that, I'm like, everybody wants to see Nicky Rod versus Gordon. I don't think Gordon's
that
afraid.
Rule set would be cool too.
Oh yeah, that rule set would be great because there's stalling calls, there's points involved, there's submissions involved. Like, I think it's a great blend, and I think the fans want to see it. I want to see it. I think it should happen. But, like, at the end of the day, Gordon decides what he wants to do. He's the big man behind it. So, but hopefully he gets some pressure and he wants to do it. But otherwise, it has to happen at ADCC, I guess.
Yeah, I was a little bit ignorant to the Fight Pass. I actually didn't know that there was going to be different rules. I thought it was going to be like EBI, like it is before. And to be honest, I'm not really a fan of EBI rule set. I think there's good parts about it, but overall, to decide who's better, I'm not a fan of the rule set. And one thing I noticed is, I think it was at the end of regulation, I think Nicky Rod was down one. He was down a -1, and he was just dominating the whole match.
Yeah.
And so to me, that looked like, I mean, I didn't see Yuri really like, I don't know if he could do anything from the bottom, but he wasn't really doing too much. He was kind of just holding on and trying to just keep his little quarter guard or whatever he had there. And that to me, I didn't look at it as Nicky Rod stalling. You know what I mean? He was in a dominant position and Yuri was just shelling up. So I feel like if you're going to give -1s to the top player, almost has to go to the bottom player too. So that was one thing that I thought about the rule set that I didn't really care for too much.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's funny because actually I thought like the rule set overall was pretty good. I thought, but just like anything, right? For the UFC, it was the first time they were doing it. You got refs, you got like judges that are calling, and they're like, it's the first time, so for sure it's not going to be perfect. But I find like overall, I prefer that over EBI. EBI is too much of a gaming. Like it used to be really fun, and then people started like just basically doing overtime and gaming. Like you can stall for 10 minutes, go to overtime, win. So I find like with a new rule set like we saw this weekend, it has room for improvement. And for sure there was a little few calls that were not good, but in the end, I think most people that were winning or that won were supposed to win. And for Nicky Rod, it was funny. We were kind of Matt's side, and me and Owen Jones, we were on the side and just like screaming like action bottom, because Yuri was like not having any negative, but he was not doing anything. No. But in the end, look, he got some negative, and then it doesn't matter because Nicky Rod dominated and scored, and he won, and he deserved to win. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, even like a guy like Nicholas Marigali, who's just, he looked incredible. He really outclassed Pena. Made him look like he didn't really even train for this. And maybe it's because of the training partners and the coaches that Marigali has versus who Pena has. I guess the sport is moving along, and Pena's still kind of using older technology and relying on things that once made him successful, but it doesn't look like he's going to be successful with those things anymore. And I realize Nicky Rod's a coach and I guess a training partner of yours, but how do you feel about Marigali versus Nicky Rod? Like, what do you think happens in that match?
Dude, I think it would be a great match, and even Nicky Rod talked about it. I think it's a match he wants. Marigali's impressive, I gotta say. Like he's impressing me because he's getting better every time we see him in no-gi, and in the gi he's been tearing it up. Like obviously, like we all know how good he is, and obviously he's a great athlete and he's coachable because he's getting better, and you can see that he's actually implementing new technique and getting better. So to me, like it's a match as a fan I would really like to see. Of course, I'm biased towards Nicky Rod, but I think Nicky Rod is so physically dominant on top of improving himself too, because like Nicky Rod, like people think sometimes like the first image you see from Nicky Rod is like him, like Jersey guy, like a bit douchebag or whatever. But like when you get to know him, first of all, he's a sweetheart, very good guy, very, very team, like he's part of the team, and you can feel it. And on top, he's actually trying to improve, like technically, he asks questions all the time. He's trying to find solutions. So he's way smarter than people think, in my opinion. And so I think his physicality and his technicality would make it for a very interesting match. I think he would win, but very, very interesting match.
Yeah, I'm a huge Nicky Rod fan. I love his game. I love his attitude and his style. Yeah. It's awesome, and he's improving and he's beating the best guys, man. So I think that fight with Gordon, it has to happen.
Yeah.
That's all I got for you, man. I really appreciate your time. Can you let us know where we can find you and plug any products you might have for us?
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Matt. Really appreciate talking to you. I was happy to visit you too. I think we had some good times out there, and fuck, man, you're doing good stuff out there too in the Vancouver area, man. And it shows because you have some good guys on your team too. So
thanks, man.
Yeah, and as far as finding me, you can find me on like Instagram. I think is the platform I use the most at Leclerc BJJ. So my last name BJJ. And as far as sponsor, I have a main sponsor, Roll Forever. It's been helping me for years, and it's a clothing sponsor. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Just Instagram, Roll Forever.
Online content?
Online content, yeah. I almost forgot my own website, right? But yeah, I've been teaching. I have my own website called leclercjiujitsu.com. Pretty easy. And I've been teaching in French and English for quite some time. It's filled with hundreds of hours of content. So, and I just update it every week. So yeah, if you guys want to check it out, leclercjiujitsu.com. It's a place where I upload my seminars, upload weekly techniques, and I have some classes on there.
Awesome. And I just want to vouch personally for PO's instruction. Like I said, I've been to a couple of his seminars. Really great stuff. Great instructor. Good focus on mechanics and concepts. And like overall great guy too. If you can ever go to a seminar with this guy, or if you want to just learn from him, subscribe to his online academy. Highly recommended. Guys, if you want to support the show, check out the links in the bottom. I'm not going to say more than that. PO Leclerc, thank you so much for coming, man. I really appreciate your time.
Really appreciate you too.
Awesome. Essential Jiu-Jitsu Podcast is everything you need to know about Jiu-Jitsu. Take care, guys.